a place of this is the life that I choose for my future on purpose, not from a place of I want to be married to somebody that doesn't look at porn because I never want to feel like I'm second to pornography, right? Because that's an uncomfortable feeling and I don't want that. That's not what it's about. Once you have your own back, it's not about the porn at all. Like you recognize that the porn has nothing to do with your worth. The porn has nothing to do with who you are. Um, and so then you get to make a decision. Okay, well, what do I want on my life on purpose? And
I
it's a
also
pretty great
think
place to be.
I also think when you get to the place where you have your own back, you can also see clearly that um, porn use is a coping mechanism. It's a coping strategy. And so
Yeah.
if you have a husband that falls back into and comes out of porn use, then that just tells you that that is how he's dealing with his emotions.
Mhm.
That's his coping strategy. And
Yeah, and
it's
suddenly
not,
it's
it
not
doesn't have anything to do
as
with
big of a deal.
you.
Yeah.
It doesn't have anything to do with your, the way you look or the way, like, it has nothing to do with that. Like when I'm
Yeah.
stressed out, I go to Diet Coke. When he's
Right.
stressed out, he goes to porn. Like it's a coping strategy. It's a coping
Yeah.
mechanism. And so when you can get to the point where you have your own back and you can trust yourself and your own intuition and you know yourself, then you can start to see that, wait a second, that's a coping strategy. I have coping strategies. Like I tell my
Mhm.
I coined this years ago with one of my clients. And we were kind of just and trying to make light of a hard situation that, you know, and I said, my coping strategy, like my coping mechanism is socially acceptable. Theirs is not.
Yeah.
Like it's socially acceptable for me to drink a Diet Coke when I'm stressed. It's not socially acceptable to look at porn when you're stressed. But there are
Depending
coping.
on the social circle that you're in, but yeah.
Yeah. Yes, right. Um, and if we can see it like that and we can approach our spouses that way, like an understanding, like, hey, when you are feeling emotions, when you're feeling stressed out at work or I don't know, like I don't know, whatever those emotions are, then that is what you use as a release for your emotion. Can we
Mhm.
talk about something that might be a different release that would be more in our marriage contract that would be, you know, more, useful or uh I don't know what the word is, like
Yeah, and
agree
I see
upon,
I see
you
what
know?
you're saying, like, develop a routine with them, and I do think that those are conversations that are gonna be positive to have in a relationship. The where I would steer a woman in this conversation, um, is making sure that they're not starting that conversation from a place of, "I'm trying to help my husband with his behavior,"
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
And husband might not be ready to admit that it's a coping strategy.
mhm.
And so, like, anyway, you'll have to navigate that for each of your own individual relationships. But, like, if I go to husband and say, "Did you realize this is a coping strategy? You're probably just really stressed." Husband may feel really validated when you say that, or husband may feel defensive and like, "Why do you always try and label me with stuff?" Like,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, I
so,
mean, I think you have to decide with your relationship, um,
yeah, yeah,
what
totally.
the conversation is.
Mm. But I think,
But I
Terry,
think
your
it's
point is being able
empowering
to
for
object.
women to know
Go ahead.
I think it's empowering for women if you can look at that kind of behavior, if you can look at that behavior and draw a parallel to behavior that doesn't feel scary to you and see how it is the same thing, that is empowering.
Yes.
And I know that because I've coached women on this that are like, what do you mean it's no different than eating donuts? Because that's my coping strategy, right? Is eating donuts. And they're like, what do you mean it is no different? It is not. It's not the same. And I'm like, I get it. But I'm telling you, once you can draw the parallel and see how the desire for the behavior and the outcome on your personal life is not that different, you'll gain all of your power back because you won't be giving all of your power to the behavior. You don't want to give away all of your power to the behavior. But I would say that there's other behaviors that you need to protect yourself from.
Mhm.
I mean, to Ruth's point, dealing with clients that, have a credit card that they're racking up dollars on, there could be a point there where you might need to physically separate yourself in a way that protects you from the aftermath of that behavior. You might be in an abusive situation where you need to protect yourself from that behavior. You might be in I one of my clients has a husband who has a couple of times tried to commit suicide. And so for her, like, I'm not going to tell her that his suicide attempts are the same as eating donuts. But he does have coping strategies that often lead to uh, or have been triggers for that behavior. So drinking might be one for him that I'm going to try. Like she's trying to develop her trust again when he has a drink in his hand. And so it's like, okay, if you're really trying to develop trust on this, then we need to see how drinking can be the same as eating the donuts, right? And so, anyway, it's tricky and it's nuanced. Um, but ultimately, if their behavior is not literally destroying their lives, right? Or like putting your family in financial ruin or hurting you or themselves, then there might be some parallels that we could draw to other behaviors that are socially acceptable that do not destroy lives either, but that are coping mechanisms. I think that's a really valuable line to draw.